I never thought. He whom I had nurtured and brought into government, and whose life I had worked so hard in prison to save, as he was threatened with hanging, that one day he would be the man who would turn against me.
The vision of a new and a prosperous Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe we want, is a shared one and transcends political party lines. As your president, I pledge to act fairly and impartially.
And has the president of Zimbabwe acted fairly? The other question is the Zimbabwean crisis really a delusion? As claimed by the governing party ZANU-PF. Tonight, a debate on this question. ZANU-PF joins us, the MDC Alliance, as well as the National Patriotic Front, for this debate on the crisis in Zimbabwe. Good evening, I'm Aldrin St-Pierre, and welcome to African Perspective. Tensions between Zimbabwe's government and its citizens continue to escalate as the current administration denies the existence of a political crisis. It's labeling the government's critics as terrorists and dark forces. Several activists, opposition politicians and journalists have been arrested or have fled the country in self-opposed exile. Efet Musikawa and Noma Bolani compiled this report.
What we have seen over the past 3 years is a severe dissipation of hope among the people of Zimbabwe.
The installation of Emmerson Mnangagwa in 2017 was supposed to usher in a new era for Zimbabwe, an administration free of tyranny and the rejuvenation of the country's dismal economy. But it has not been the case.
The people of Zimbabwe, most of whom thought that the end of the regime of Robert Mugabe was going to bring some respite for the people. Unfortunately, things appear to have gone from bad to worse.
And with the increase of the arrests of alleged dissidents, their hope of receiving respite from the justice system is also bleak. The judiciary has been accused by many of being an extension of the state and lacking independence. The latest incidents include the barring of top human rights lawyer Beatrice Mteta from defending jailed journalist Hopewell Chinono.
We have also seen, unfortunately, the increasing use of the judiciary and the weaponization of the law. And we have seen this again in the case of Hopewell Chinono, Jacob Ngarivume, Godfrey Kurauone, a young MDC Alliance councillor in Masvingo, who, even though the state says that he does not have the authority to prosecute, continues to languish in jail because the magistrate will not grant them bail. So unfortunately, what we are seeing in Zimbabwe now is that whereas in the past you could rely on the judiciary, or at least some spaces in the judiciary, to get some respite, unfortunately right now the judiciary itself has become a space in which the violation of human rights is palpable.
Meanwhile, today's court decision was as expected. Opposition politician Job Sikhala will remain in custody after the Harare Magistrate Court denied his refusal to remand application. All of the alleged dissidents who've been arrested recently have been denied bail. His lawyers were barred from briefing the media afterwards, with Zimbabwe police claiming the media scrum violated COVID-19 regulations.
We have a difficult situation in Zimbabwe, and this is why we are saying things in Zimbabwe are not normal. Zimbabweans are under siege. The human rights situation is deteriorating. The political situation is a case of a crisis.
Zimbabwe is adamant that those in custody were justly arrested as they were planning to overthrow the government. It also doesn't agree with the description that their country is in a political crisis. Noma Bolani, SABC News.
And the question is, was the election of Emmerson Mnangagwa a crisis that led to the situation that the country currently faces at the moment, and some even arguing that they knew that under the leadership of Emmerson Mnangagwa, the country will not prosper. Our guest this evening, Tafatsa Mokati, who we had on the show previously, who's the ZANU-PF Information Officer. We are also joined by Gladys Hlajwayo, who is the MDC Alliance International Relations Officer, and Jealousy Moarira will also join us from the National Patriotic Front for that debate. But here is one incident that probably lays the foundation for this debate that we will have, one of the last interviews that Robert Mugabe, the former president of Zimbabwe, had with the SABC.
I never thought he whom I had nurtured and brought into government and whose life I had worked so hard in prison to save, as he was threatened with hanging, that one day he would be the man who would turn against me. But there it was, there it is. It happened on the 15th of November. He was assisted by the army. I said it was a coup d'etat.
And was it a coup d'etat? Those are one of the questions that we'll be asking this evening as we have the debate on the crisis in Zimbabwe. Let's start off with Tafatsa, who's joining us. Tafatsa, good evening. Let's start off here. Do you agree that there is a crisis in Zimbabwe?
Certainly not, because there is no crisis in Zimbabwe. What we see is a crisis in opposition groups, some of whom have become quite very unfortunately leaderless. I see my brother Jealous Mawarire there. Just to inform you that the former president of his political party, retired Brigadier General Mtini, is now a full member of ZANU-PF and the party remains leaderless. The same with the Gladys Hlajwayo. The MDC has split into various formations to the extent that we can hardly point out who is who in the opposition. So that's where the crisis is. But we do not have a crisis as a country. We have challenges with COVID-19, just like any society across the world, and we are on course to addressing that. And the figures appear in terms of recoveries and the total number of infections. Of course, with the number of deaths, we appear to be winning the war.
So would you say there is no health crisis, there is no human rights crisis, there is no economic crisis in Zimbabwe?
There is no human rights crisis in Zimbabwe. In fact, let me just take you a bit short memory lane. The human rights issue has always been weaponized by opposition groups and civil society, and of course, working in cahoots with the countries that have imposed the sanctions on us. But this started exactly when the Zimbabwean government, under the leadership of former President Comrade Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF government, decided to take land, taking back land from the white people in order to address the racial, colonial imbalances over the ownership of land. And it is only around that time that we started hearing organizations and the countries pandering, the human rights issue. And up to this day, it continues to be used as a pretext to justify unjustifiable attacks on the country and its leadership and its people and the stability of our nation. This is what we see in terms of health. Yes, I agree with you. Our health sector has never been spared by this scourge of sanctions. And that is why we do have challenges in our health sector. But guess what? Even with those challenges, we are continuously registering, recoveries in terms of COVID-19. Just to check the statistics, they tell you that we are now above 80% in terms of recoveries. And there are people who had written our country off completely when this disaster of COVID-19 started. There were people who postulated that the government in Zimbabwe was going to collapse because of COVID-19, that, bodies were going to be littered in the streets of Harare as a result of the disease. But thanks to the wisdom of our nation and the unity in our people and the efforts of President Emmerson Mnangagwa in particular, we have done quite very significantly well, even comparing with the regional global standards. We have done significantly well with that health system which people have always wanted to ridicule and attack day in, day out whenever they get an opportunity to do so.
Gladys, let's give you an opportunity to respond to that and also answering the question whether there is a crisis in Zimbabwe and whether you can point to any examples, if at all.
Thank you so much. As the Movement for Democratic Change Alliance, we humbly submit that there is a crisis in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is facing a crisis of governance and legitimacy arising out of, successive disputed elections and also the November coup that gave rise to a securocratic state where the military is now the decisive power bloc in terms of the politics of the country. So it's important for us to contextualize in terms of the nature of the crisis. It is a governance political crisis that we are facing in Zimbabwe. The manifestations in terms of the evidence of this crisis, we see it, in the socio-economic implosion, 837% inflation, 63% Zimbabweans are living below the poverty datum line, 7.7 million Zimbabweans are in need of food aid, 90% Zimbabweans are unemployed. We have a silent genocide in our hospitals. Just a couple of weeks back, we had 7 out of 8 stillborn babies that were recorded at Harare Central Hospital. And that shows you that we have a crisis.
Why do you call it a genocide?
We call it a genocide because of the numbers that are involved. When you record 7 out of 8 babies just in one night, it shows you that we have a real crisis that we have. And we also know that the nurses are in their second month. They've been, I think today is the 70th day in terms of their strike. So we do not have health personnel in the hospitals. High maternal mortality rate. We also have issues around, salaries and pensions, which are some of the issues that are being raised by the health personnel that are on strike. Mm-hmm. Then we have obviously issues around corruption and how also, the first family, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and some of his family members have also been involved in some of these corruption cases. And the challenge is that instead of going after some of these people that are implicated in corruption cases, we have seen a lot of catch and release. Yeah. Where I'm sure you've been following the drugs case, where we had the Minister of Health who was arrested, but then was given 50,000 bail. So there's a lot of catch and release, and there's no commitment in terms of making sure that we do not have corruption in Zimbabwe. Then obviously because of these socio-economic implosion issues and corruption, citizens have been organizing and expressing themselves in terms of the Constitution. Section 59 is quite clear that we do have the right to demonstrate and petition, and citizens have been organizing and trying to raise some of these issues around the socio-economic implosion and corruption. And what we have seen is heavy-handedness on the part of the state. As the MDC Alliance, just around the July 31st protest, we did record more than 148 violations, including 38 abductions against our members, unlawful arrests, assaults. We have also seen extrajudiciary killings. The case of Paul Munakopa, Levison, Ngube, Manzwi, and Lovo, as well as the latest case around Lavender Chiwaya. These are all extrajudiciary killings that are being perpetrated, against the citizenry.
Right. Unfortunately, because Gladys, unfortunately, because we have 3 people, I'm going to ask everyone to please be brief in their responses as we try to get as much information out of this conversation that we are having and this debate that we are having as well. So, Jealousy, I'm going to move over to you. Your assessment of what Zimbabwe is currently going through.
Yeah, Aldrin, we have a legion of crises, but the most fundamental crisis that we have in Zimbabwe is a crisis of leadership. We don't have a leader, we don't have leaders. The so-called ruling party is not a party, it's not a group of leaders. It's a cartel, it's a combination of people that have created a looting machine. And we are in the midst of a pandemic. the COVID-19 pandemic. We have 6 referral hospitals in Zimbabwe. And what has the leadership done? Literally locked those hospitals up, chain and padlock. And there's nothing that is happening there. People are dying in the hospital car parks, including even a government minister died in a car park of a hospital. We don't have hospitals that are working. We don't have doctors that are at work. We don't have nurses that are at work. And what does the government do? The government, in the midst of a pandemic like this, chooses to pay our erstwhile colonizers 3.5 billion United States dollars. They are prioritizing paying people who stole our land in the midst of this kind of a pandemic. And the argument that they are putting forward, which shows that we don't have a leadership, is that we have a constitutional provision that mandates us to pay these guys. But we have constitutional provisions that Aldrin, can you give me a bit of time to explain? Because you've given others time to explain.
I'm going to ask you to be brief, though, Jealousy, so that we get as many views as possible as well.
But I don't think you can.
I'm going to give you a minute. I'm so sorry, Jealousy. I thought it was raised with you guys, but I'm going to give you a minute to quickly conclude your point.
That's okay. That's okay with me. But what I'm saying is that in the midst of that pandemic, you are having a government that is concentrating on paying our erstwhile colonizers who stole our land. And they're paying 3.5 billion. And they have not actually come out to tell us who is going to benefit out of that 3.5 billion, how much each of the 3,000 farmers are going to get. And our simple mathematics indicates that each farmer is going to get over $1 million United States dollars. But they are purporting that they are not paying for land. They are paying for improvements on a farm. Which farmhouse costs $1 million United States dollars? Which farmhouse, which dam on a farm costs $1 million United States dollars? This is a looting scheme that they've created. And by the way, it's not the first one. They've done that with Command Agriculture. They've done that with the farm mechanization program. And now they are doing that in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic, in the midst of Cyclone Idai effects, in the midst of a gripping hunger, drought and hunger. About 8 million Zimbabweans need food right now. But what does Mnangagwa and his government do? They prioritize paying 3.5 billion United States dollars to former colonizers when our people are dying. That shows that we have a serious crisis of leadership. We don't have leadership.
Okay, Gladys, earlier on you spoke about 38 abductions as well as extrajudicial killings as well. Can you tell us who are behind these abductions?
Well, human rights abuses in Zimbabwe have always been carried out, by the state, which is the reason why you see a lot of impunity. There are no investigations whatsoever that are done into these cases. As the Movement for Democratic Change Alliance, we've been calling for investigations even around the 3, young women that were abducted, sexually abused before, they were then rearrested and charged for actually faking their own abductions. So instead of the government actually focusing on making sure that they do investigations to see who is behind these abductions, we saw that the state was more keen on, saying that these abductions were fake. So even Gukura Hundi, all the human rights abuses that have been conducted in the country from 1980, up to this day, you see that, ZANU-PF does not own up. The state does not own up in terms of actually coming out and really,
let's give Tafato a right of reply there. Tafato, as a member of the governing party, what do you say to those allegations?
Thank you very much, my dear brother, for that question. I think I must not waste much of the time to respond to, the spurious and malicious allegations that have been, peddled by these 2 colleagues. But just to emphasize that, it's quite unfortunate, that when I listened to Gladys, in 2017, when Operation Restore Lagos took place in full view of the world, The MDC, which is the part from which he comes from, I'm not sure whether it's MDC, A, B, C, Z, or Kut, or what they are now made. But you're aware that they were the second biggest party in parliament, and the former president, Comrade Robert Mugabe, was impeached. And the impeachment motion having been moved after having been jointly sponsored by two major political parties in parliament, including the MDC alliance. I think the SABC covered that one. Mr. Chamisa, who is now the leader of the MDC, one of the MDCs anyway, even went further on radio, and the video is there on YouTube everywhere, congratulating the people of Zimbabwe and saying that the November revolution of 2017 was a miraculous transition in course. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And
can you address the question, though, about the abductions? Just quickly, just address the questions around the abductions.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to say it's quite unfortunate that these people, when they've lost the political ground, they start, pointing to things that do not exist, including blaming their own actions, which they also took part in. It's quite unfortunate. They must stop lying.
Do you know of cases that have been opened against police officials around the abductions?
Oh, quite well. I think what is most important is to tell you this, that one, it was malicious for Ms. Gladys Slachwa to suggest that 40 people have been abducted in this country. Asking her whether anything has been done, I thought it was important to ask her to give you the names, including those that have suffered extrajudicial killings, except that I also need to move further and explain and clarify that the case of Lavender that she's talking about, I'm sure the SABC is now aware of the police statement that was released with regards to the said passing of the man and may so rest in peace.
Yeah.
But this death was not associated in any way with political things.
But you agree that he was abducted?
No, he was not even abducted. I'm talking to you about the investigation that has been carried out by the police. Right now, let me just clarify this issue, because I think it is a malicious lie that is being peddled against the state, and it cannot be left hanging for justice's sake.
Okay.
The police are investigating.
Okay. So let's end it there. When we come back, we're going to speak to people who have fled the country because of the crisis in Zimbabwe and why they fled the country. And then I'll give my panelists also an opportunity to chip in on that conversation just after this.
Jobs and more jobs will be at the core of our policies. Ladies and gentlemen, the vision of a new and a prosperous Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe we want, is a shared one and transcends political party lines. As your president, I pledge to act fairly and impartially, without fear or favor, as a president of all Zimbabweans. As I have always said, I'm your listening president, a servant leader.
Well, now let's bring into this conversation Josephat Ngulube as well as Noxolo Maphosa, who are Zimbabwean activists on self-imposed exile here in South Africa. Good evening and welcome to this conversation. Noxolo, let's start off with you. Why did you leave Zimbabwe?
Good evening. I left Zimbabwe because I wasn't safe in Zimbabwe. Those people were following me everywhere. That's why I left the country. I was scared of my life. I was scared of the life of my child. That's why I left Zimbabwe.
Do you know why they were following you?
Yes, they were following me because they wanted to know about my uncle, Josephat Mzaca Ngulube's whereabouts, and how do we communicate with him, and where are these hashtag ZANU-PF masks are made.
And who are they?
I don't know who are they, because these people, they go carrying guns.
They carried guns?
Yes.
When was this?
It was on the 29th of July, around 1 a.m. The 7 men who were armed broke into our house and asked about my uncle's whereabouts, Josephat Mzaca Ngulube. And then they asked about the mask, the hashtag ZANU-PF must go mask, and the documents and the things for the demonstrations. After that, the others were searching the house, turning things upside down. They took his files and the money which we had and the money which was in his bedroom. Before they left, they threatened us and said we shouldn't tell anyone or post anything on social media, and that we should tell our uncle to stay away from politics because they will kill him. And then on the 8th of August, when I was in Bulawayo CBD, 4 men were following me. When I noticed that, I quickly called Katrina Dube, the girl who works in our shop. And then I told her that there are men who are following me. Before I ended the call, there was a man next to me. He just opened his jacket and showed me the gun and told me to keep quiet. And then he grabbed me and forced me into the car. They blindfolded me and went with me to a place which I don't know. When we arrived in that place, they made me sit on a chair, and then they tied my hand. They tied my hands on the back, and then they started asking me about my uncle's whereabouts and how do we communicate with him in my WhatsApp phone. When I told them that I don't know, one of them said, he thinks that we are playing. And then he took something like a sharp object, and then he tore my dress top, which I was wearing, and the bra and the legging and the pants. And then they started beating me all over the body. And then after some time, they left me and went out. They came back later, and then they beated me again. And then one of them said, you should tell us where she stayed, so that next time when we want to deliver the message, we should come straight to the house. And then I told them that we are now staying in Country Park because we have moved from Guabalanda after the incident, after they broke into the house before the 31 demonstrations.
Yeah. Okay.
Then they drove me.
Sorry, I just quickly want to bring up Tafadzwa. I saw you giggling there. Why?
Oh, it's quite unfortunate, but I think what is most important is for me to inform you that this is not the first time when we have seen or heard people leaving the country for greener pastures. There are some who have gone to the UK, to the United States of America, in South Africa, in Botswana. And in most cases, when they are seeking to get an asylum or a cheap permanent stay or a semi-permanent stay in the country that they go, they always accuse the government of having been trailing them. But let me just tell you the most interesting part. When COVID-19 started hitting in the Western Hemisphere, and particularly in the countries, in Britain and the United States of America, you may need to be aware that we have received so many of those people who left this country saying police officers and CIOs and the army were trailing me, doing all these sorts of things for me. I had to leave the country.
Why were you laughing? What was so funny about what you were saying?
Should I proceed?
What was funny about what you were saying? That was the question.
Okay, thank you very much. I think what is most important, like what I keep insisting, is to have this discussion in a civilized manner, in which case I'm not here.
But you're
on
not
this
answering, Dafato, you're not
told
answering the question. You're not answering the question. I'm asking you, why were you laughing? What is funny about what she said?
What is funny is that we've seen these theatrics over time, and I'm telling you that people who left this country in these circumstances that of lies, they are coming back as a result of COVID-19, and we've received hundreds of them. And some of them, we put them in our quarantine centers. Now they are free in the country to which they have returned, but they said when they left, they were living in the circumstances that this lady is lying. So we are tired of all those lies. But all that I just want to say is that whoever is concocting all these lies for whatever purpose, it doesn't help our country. It doesn't help them. For me and all Zimbabweans, let me just take this opportunity to encourage that this is the only country that we call home. We do not have any other country, and no matter what circumstances can be, South Africa will never be our home.
But some of them have decided. Some of them have decided to flee, to leave the country and flee. Like Josfat over here. Josfat, listening into what Dafato has said and what Nokolo has said, I'd like to hear your take on it.
Yeah. Oh, you know what?
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening, viewers. Thank you, everyone. What I would say to Tafaswa is that he is not telling the truth because this case of our breakage, when they broke into our house, we reported at Luveve police station. Actually, I was not there at home when we reported the case at Luveve police station. The case that involves the usage of guns is referred to what you call homicide department in Zimbabwe. The homicide department in Zimbabwe refused to take the case when they suggested that this is a case from the Ferret team. The Ferret team is just as good as the 5th Brigade, the team that was used to massacre in the mass murdering of people in Matabeleland. Soon after the president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, announced, when he said he's under attack, when he said they are bad apples, when he said they are terrorists in this country, automatically was declaring war. And we should remember that this same Mnangagwa that we are talking about, who is the president, was Mugabe's hitman during Ugrawundi. And he's the one who was calling people from Matabeleland that they are dissidents. The moment he called people that were dissidents, the next thing was the mass murdering of people from Matabeleland. Same applies with now. He has called people that people are terrorists, they are bad apples, that he's under attack, which means it actually acknowledges that there's a crisis in the country. When the president of the country is under attack by the terrorists, it's actually a crisis that we've got as a country. Yeah. So when this case, to show that this guy is lying, Dafatswa, the case was reported and it was referred to be a Ferret team, which is an organization that is carrying out the abductions and the killing of people in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Right now, we can't say we left the country for greener pastures. I've got a shop. I resigned from government as a director. I've got a shop that I was running. Even Nokolo left the shop. She's the one who was running my shop, even during the time when I was false accused and I was sentenced for 7 years in prison. I'm just 3 months old from Chikurubi maximum prison on bail pending appeal.
Okay. Jealousy, let me just quickly bring you in. You had tweeted as well that you guys were wary that under the leadership of Emmerson Mnangagwa, the country would be worse off.
Yes. You see the way that he came into power. The operation that Tafadzwa refers to as Operation Restore Legacy is a coup. He came in on the backdrop of a coup. He rolled in tanks, military tanks, deployed soldiers on the streets of Harare, arrested President Mugabe, and now the guy who is the foreign minister announced the coup and announced the arrest of President Mugabe. And Mnangagwa ordered soldiers to go to houses of cabinet ministers, and some of the ministers are now staying in South Africa. Kasukuwere attempted to come back here. He had 4 cases, went through the courts. He was exonerated But he was also hounded out of the country, and he is running away from the same guys, from SAS, from the Ferret team, from the CIOs. So what we have seen and what SADC, we are pushing SADC to understand is that a military government that is in power in Zimbabwe, that the then Minister of Mashingo, the province said Mnangagwa is going to shoot to stay in power. It's a military government, and it's a military government that is using the army, that is using the security sector to keep itself in power. And they've created a looting machine, and to protect that loot and to protect the looting, they have even employed a young man like my brother, Tafazwa Mugwadi, who was a member of the MDC. And there is no better incarnation of the crisis in Zimbabwe than this young man who was a member of the opposition, calling himself Two-Boy, who has now joined ZANU-PF to defend the atrocities simply because they can give him a 4x4 vehicle, simply because they can give him a few thousand so that he can take care of himself. That's
I then
a
ask you
manifestation of the crisis that we have when young men are radicalized and militarized simply because they are a bit of trinkets that they're given. It's really, really very painful. And you can see even from the way that he's laughing when that sister was narrating the ordeal that she went through. It shows that he actually doesn't even believe in what he's saying. He doesn't believe even in a job that he's doing. The other time he was using vulgar language on an international television. This is the crisis that we're talking about. When young men that we should be looking up to, young men that we think...
Gladys, let's bring in Gladys to this conversation as well, Jealousy. Jealousy, let's bring in Gladys to this conversation as well. Gladys, Jealousy just touched on another issue, and that is SADC. And the recent SADC summit just took place, and there was no mention in the final report around Zimbabwe. What's your take as the MDC alliance, what the international community should be doing if there is indeed a crisis which is denied by the likes of Dafazo?
Thank you so much. Like I indicated, as the MDC, we continue to we assert that there is a governance and legitimacy crisis in Zimbabwe, and because of the and the reason the solution to extricating Zimbabwe out of that governance and legitimacy crisis is obviously a dialogue process.
Yeah.
And we have always called for dialogue as the Movement for Democratic Change Alliance, but we are also alive to the fact that, we do not have the conducive environment.
But didn't you as the MDC Alliance refuse to join the president when he was calling on all political parties around the table?
Well, that Pollard process is not really a dialogue platform. The Pollard process is more of, a platform, that is not really meant to look at the underlying, causes of the crisis in Zimbabwe and to come up with solutions. It looks like, that platform is there to support ZANU-PF, which is why some of the political parties in that platform have gone to actually join ZANU-PF, and some of them are aiding ZANU-PF in terms of its agenda to also even, destroy the authentic opposition. I'm sure you are aware of how Pollard actors are being used to go after the MDC alliance in terms of destroying our party, recalling our MPs from parliament, reversing the will of the people that was expressed in...
on that particular point, Gladys, as well, you spoke about the legitimacy of the government of Zimbabwe. Do you think that the MDC alliance itself also faces a crisis around legitimacy? Because who should we be listening to?
We do not face a crisis of legitimacy. What we are facing is a government that is keen on making sure that there is a one-party state in Zimbabwe. They do not want to see an authentic opposition. They wanted a compliant opposition, or an opposition that pander to the whims of the executive. And obviously, the MDC alliance is an authentic opposition, political parties, which say, and we stay in line in terms of our values and what we believe in. We have said that we cannot join, the Pollard process because we do not think it's genuine, and we have called for genuine dialogue.
Is Thokozani Kupe your leader?
Thokozani Kupe is not our leader.
Leaders
do not come from the court. Leaders do not come, from ZANU-PF. We cannot be told by ZANU-PF who becomes the leader of the opposition. Our leader is Advocate Nelson Chamisa, and that will never change. Because Advocate Nelson Chamisa actually won the last election, the 2018 election, that's the reason why ZANU-PF is going after him, to make sure that they destroy the authentic opposition in Zimbabwe.
Okay. In conclusion, I'm just going to take us a couple of steps back to 2018. Tafato, I'm going to start off with you. Was it a coup? Was it not a coup? 2017.
Mr. President,
sorry, we are losing you there. Sorry, Tafato. Can you just speak up a bit?
Thank you very much. I'm saying it's quite unfortunate you allowed one of the panelists to personalize insults at Mayor, but of course, being an adult and a matured man, I will not go down to his level. Just safe to say, when people say, I think it is always good for them to be based on facts and evidence-based than to just run and then start spewing head. I don't think this is the age in which we are living in. The best way Zimbabwe can progress is when Zimbabweans put their minds in the same thinking cap and work together with the leadership in order to achieve Vision 2030. And this is what President Emmerson Mnangagwa is doing through calling all leaders of political parties who are willing to participate in the national dialogue, in the political
I'm going to ask you again, 2017, was it a coup or not? Sorry? Sorry, we're losing you. Your audio is not so good. Let's try again. 2017, the 21st of November, was it a coup or not?
What is most important is that the people of Zimbabwe are united and they participated in that process.
Of the coup.
And that the MGC, which let Katwa come from, also participated in the processes of impeachment to ensure that Zimbabwe...
Was it a coup or not, Tafato? Tafato, was it a coup or not?
It wasn't a coup. I don't know what you think it was, but Zimbabweans know what it was, and that is why they participated.
It wasn't a coup. Jealousy, you set up the press briefing that the former president Robert Mugabe had, and you had a conversation with him about that particular incident, and what was his assumption of it, or his summation of it?
In fact, he is on record calling it a coup. It was a coup. What happened on the 15th of November was military tanks being rolled onto the streets of Harare. The president, the democratically elected president of the time, being arrested by soldiers. Journalists at the national broadcaster being beaten. A major general from the army in full military regalia going on national television announcing that they've taken over and that the president is under house arrest. President Mugabe himself told the AU delegation that he was under house arrest.
Okay.
So
what
happened on the 15th of November?
Do you take any responsibility? Do you take any responsibility for the 2013 court challenge?
Yes, I take responsibility.
What is
very much? I take responsibility for the 2013 challenge, and I have recently tweeted that in everything that you do which is political, you have to understand that there are political vouchers that are out there that will pounce on anything if you act outside the political formation.
What regrets do you have? What are the regrets?
Advancing. The regrets is that a thing that I started thinking that this was a move to protect constitutionalism was pounced upon by political vouchers to advance their own partisan political objective. And for that I regret so much, and I would like to apologize to Zimbabweans for that. I have learned my lesson that if you want to make any sustainable change as a leader, in the country, you have to work within the ambit of a political formation. And this is what I've done starting from 2015. I have learned that if you do anything outside a political formation, that thing is susceptible to being pounced upon by political vultures. And they did that. And there are quite a lot of people that ran with my court application for their own personal agenda.
Okay, Joseph, sorry, Tafazo, sorry, you wanted to say what?
Oh, I just wanted to say, you know, Jealous, it is always wise and good to be leaders. And when we're speaking to these reputable, you know, broadcasters like SABC, we have got to be truthful. Jealous in 2013, I think nothing can be further from the truth. You were working with a ZANU-PF faction led by Jonathan Moyo and Xavier Kasukwe, the people that you claim to be in exile, when you know that they are dodging from criminal offenses they are facing before the courts, which borders on corruption, the Zimbabwe scandal, which ravaged our education system under the watch of Jonathan Moyo, where you took money and bought bicycles for his villagers in Toloto. It happened. The same with the Xavier Kasukwe. You know about the elephant scandal in Toloto, all those things happened. But in 2013, just in short, Ivan, Jealous Mawarire was working with the ZANU-PF faction of Jonathan Moyo and Xavier Kasukwe, and he was receiving funds to push up the court process. It's unfortunate.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you guys so much. But let's end off this conversation. Nokolo, you've listened into what the three panelists have to say, and these are all three politicians who are in Zimbabwe. Are you guys hopeful at all? Nokolo, let's start off with you.
There is no hope.
There's no hope.
There is no hope. There is totally no hope. I'm not hoping. There is no hope. There is totally no hope.
Joseph?
Yeah, we've got a problem. As you can see right now, the ruling party is bringing a clown into a big studio like this. It's really sad to see these guys are so heartless. They don't care about the abuse of ladies, the abuse of people. They don't just care. We've got a crisis in Zimbabwe. Sometimes what you should see, what we are seeing there, we've got a group of people that are fighting. In this revolution, we've got two groups of people who are fighting two different things. We are fighting ZANU-PF must go, but we find other people, they don't want ZANU-PF must go. They want to come back. Even if they come back to Zimbabwe, they want to continue looting the resources of this country. So we've got a problem because we are not fighting together. So we've got a crisis, a big problem.
Okay, thank you guys so much. That is Nokolo Maphosa as well as Joseph Ngulube, who are in self-imposed exile here in South Africa. And thank you so much, Tafatswa, as well as Jealousy and Gladys. Appreciate your time. We've come to the end of today's program. Thank you so much for all the contributions and watching this evening's show. We'll be back again next week, same time, same place, right here on the SABC News Channel 404. Goodbye.